The blizzard outside roared like an untamed beast, shaking the walls of my wooden hut. Snow whipped against the small window, obscuring the already darkened landscape. I stoked the fire, grateful for its warmth as I sipped on a cup of steaming tea. Winter in the mountains was unforgiving, but this storm felt particularly fierce, as though nature itself were in turmoil. It was then, through the howling wind, that I heard it, a soft knock on the door. At first, I thought it was a trick of the storm, but the knock came again, more insistent. I grabbed my lantern and approached cautiously. Who would be out in such weather? No one lived within miles of my hut, and the nearest town was a day's trek away. When I opened the door, I froze. Standing there, shivering and wrapped in what appeared to be a shimmering silver cloak, was a woman unlike any I had ever seen. Her skin glowed faintly, a pale, otherworldly hue, and her eyes were large and iridescent, reflecting the light like pools of liquid mercury. She stood no taller than a child, but her posture exuded a grace that belied her diminutive size. She looked at me with wide eyes, her lips trembling. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then, as if realizing her vulnerability, she turned and bolted into the storm. "Wait," I called, stepping out into the freezing wind. "You'll freeze out there?" She hesitated, glancing back at me with a mix of fear and desperation. Slowly, she took a step forward, then another, until she stood in the doorway again. Her body shivered uncontrollably, and I gestured for her to come inside. Reluctantly, she stepped over the threshold. I closed the door quickly, shutting out the biting wind. She hovered near the entrance, as if afraid to come closer. "It's okay," I said gently, raising my hands to show I meant no harm. "You're safe here." She didn't respond, but her eyes darted around the room, taking in the modest furnishings. I offered her a blanket, and after a moment's hesitation, she accepted, wrapping it around herself tightly. Her silver cloak seemed to shimmer faintly in the firelight, as though it were alive. "Where did you come from?" I asked, though I wasn't sure she would understand me. She tilted her head, studying me with those unervingly luminous eyes. Then, to my surprise, she pointed upward. "The sky," I murmured, half to myself. She nodded. I had heard tales of strange sightings in these mountains. Lights in the sky, whispers of alien visitors, but I had always dismissed them as folklore. Yet here she was standing in my hut, an enigma made flesh. Over the next few hours, I tried to communicate with her. She didn't speak, at least not in words I could understand, but she gestured and made soft, melodic sounds that seemed to resonate with an unearthly harmony. She touched her chest and then pointed to me, as if to say, "Who are you?" "My name is Jack," I said, placing a hand on my chest. "Jack." She mimicked the gesture, but didn't speak. Instead, she drew a series of intricate patterns in the frost on the window pane. They looked like constellations, though none I recognized. As the storm raged on, she grew more at ease, even venturing closer to the fire. She seemed fascinated by its flickering flames, her fingers reaching out tentatively toward the warmth. I offered her food, but she only nibbled on a piece of bread, as though she wasn't used to such fare. When the blizzard finally began to wane, she stood and pulled her silver cloak tightly around her. She looked at me, her eyes filled with something I could only describe as gratitude. Then she pointed to the door and mimicked walking away. "You're leaving?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. She nodded, then placed a hand on my shoulder. Her touch was warm, almost electric. Before I could say anything else, she turned and stepped outside into the still falling snow. I followed her to the doorway, watching as she walked into the clearing. There, she paused and looked up at the sky. A bright light appeared above us, cutting through the clouds. It descended slowly, illuminating the snow-covered landscape. The woman looked back at me one last time and smiled. Then, in a flash of light, she was gone, leaving nothing but faint footprints in the snow. The days that followed were quiet, but far from ordinary. I couldn't stop thinking about her or the strange symbols she'd drawn on my window. They haunted my dreams, shimmering and shifting like living constellations. I tried to recreate them on paper, hoping to find some meaning in their intricate patterns. As weeks turned into months, the memory of her visit became a part of me, shaping my thoughts and fueling my curiosity. One spring evening, as the snow began to melt and the first buds of life appeared on the trees, I decided to hike to the peak of the mountain. Something deep within me felt drawn to the place where the stars seemed closest. I packed a bag with supplies and set out at dawn. The climb was arduous, but the air was crisp and the scenery breathtaking. When I reached the summit, I found a small, flat clearing surrounded by jagged rocks. In the center, etched into the ground, were the same symbols she had drawn on my window. They glowed faintly, as though charged with an energy I couldn't comprehend. As I stood there, the sky darkened, and a familiar light appeared overhead. It descended slowly, bathing the clearing in an ethereal glow. My heart raced as a figure emerged from the light. It was her. She looked just as she had on that stormy night, but this time, her expression was calm and confident. She held out a hand, and though I hesitated, I reached for it. The moment our hands touched, the world around me seemed to dissolve. I saw stars, galaxies, and endless expanses of light. I felt her thoughts, her gratitude for my kindness, her loneliness in a world so different from her own, and her desire to share something extraordinary with me. When I woke, I was back in my hut, the symbols from the summit etched faintly into the wooden floor. The air was filled with a sense of peace, as though the universe itself had whispered a secret just for me. Though I never saw her again, I knew she was out there among the stars. And every night, as I looked up at the sky, I felt a connection to something greater than myself, a reminder that even in the vastness of the cosmos, a single act of kindness could bridge worlds.